Hey guys, you've heard of the Young Turks podcast because you're listening to it right now. But make sure that you subscribe and give it a 5-star rating if you like it. Thank you for listening. All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk Uygur, Anna Kasparian with you guys. Nothing but fun. Anna, good to have you back.
Thank you.
All right, fun for everybody. Members, you'll get her entire speech/panel at the United Nations. tyt.com/join to become a member. And don't miss any part of this show. I got two great guests for you in the third hour. They're both directors. One did a movie where they put a Proud Boys member and an Antifa member, both like pretty significant members of those groups, together and saw what happened. And so there are twists and turns in that story. So it might not be necessarily what you expected. Although I don't know what you're expecting, because anything could happen. So don't miss that interview, that's amazing. And then the life story of Roger Ailes. Two amazing interviews today. So that's in the third hour. Of course, the members only, post games only for the members, and that's why it's members only. And that's also in the third hour. If you want to try out Young Turks free for a week, try tyt.com/trial. Later in this program, amazing poll about number of Americans who believe that Donald Trump is being subjected to a witch hunt. But do they? So lots of amazing stories, and he of course goes to bat for all the racists and bigots on Fox News. That's also coming up. Okay, so Casper, as always, big news leading. What do we got?
All right. Kellyanne Conway is playing the role of damage control manager following the horrific shootings that took place in New Zealand. And so she's making her rounds on Fox News, let's keep it real, and she's very defensive about anyone who's trying to blame Donald Trump or conservatives for inspiring this shooter to open fire in two separate mosques in New Zealand. Take a look.
There were people around the world comparing this guy and his manifesto to Donald Trump. Just curious, your reaction to that parallel.
That's predictable and outrageous. In fact, this man compares his motivations to that of the mass shooter in Norway in 2011, and those who think that's an ancient history should go back and school themselves on what happened there. Also, this president condemns hate and evil and bigotry, and we will continue to do so. People should feel safe, but they should especially feel safe in their places of worship, and we've seen far too often where that is not the case. Unlike most mass shootings, this man came with pre-receipts, if you will. He put out a 70-page manifesto, and I guess everybody scoured it, searched for Donald Trump's name, and there it is one time. But he also said he aligns closely with the ideology of China. He said he's not a conservative, he's not a Nazi. I think he referred to himself as an eco-naturalist or an eco-fascist. But people should read the in its entirety.
Okay, if you notice at the end there, they had a Muslim guy on a phone. Okay, I don't know why, but that's fine. Maybe because it's a Muslim shooting or shooting at a mosque. I get it. But she then turns it to an eco-terrorist. What are you talking about? No, the guy is fascist. He's a total right winger. She makes it sound like, hey, it could go either way. No, it can't go either way. The guy's a full-blown fascist. Okay. Well, I mean, to be fair to the mass murderer, he says that he's not technically a Nazi. Wow, thank you for being fair to him. And she says you should read the whole manifesto. No, you shouldn't. That's exactly what he wants. All these shooters wanting to be famous and be known for their manifestos, like the guy in Norway that she referenced. And part of the reason that he did the shooting was because we made the guy in Norway famous. All the media all across the world. Look, a part of it is super understandable because you've got a ton of people that were killed in Norway. You've got a ton of people that were killed in New Zealand. So obviously it's a giant story. We don't have to keep saying their names over and over again. But notice also the hypocrisy. Now on this show, we said stop saying the names years ago before anybody else was saying it, okay? But when it comes to terrorism that is not done by the right wing, then Kellyanne Conway and Donald Trump and all of them say the names, say the names. You gotta, hey, listen, you know what? It's so important for us to name it. It's the Muslims who did it in the Boston Marathon bombers. They were on the cover of Time magazine. Their names were said 1 billion times over. And the list goes on and on. So the reality is you should treat all of them the same. They're all looking for glory in all the wrong places. They're looking for in their minds, whether they're right-wingers or Muslim radicals, who by the way, are also right-wingers, all looking for some sort of glory. You shouldn't give it to them. You shouldn't read their manifestos, no matter what side they're on. And then two more things about it, because she says so many outrageous things there. She said, oh, people blaming Trump is predictable. Now, why do you think that is, Kellyanne? It's predictable because he constantly goes after Muslims and spreads bigotry. And then she later said, oh, he condemns hate and evil and bigotry. No, actually he doesn't. He has never, ever condemned Islamophobia.
And more importantly, I mean, Trump has proven over and over again that he will, either brush right-wing extremism under the rug, or he'll even go the extra mile in defending them. Remember, after the hate march in Charlottesville, Virginia, he felt the need to refer to some of those individuals as very fine people. Mind you, they're chanting things like the Jews will not replace us. Now, in that case, he's specifically referring to individuals who are attacking Jewish people, but he stokes fear and encourages violence against minority groups on a regular basis. To say that he condemns hate and evil is ridiculous. In fact, we have receipts. So we have a video that's going to show you just some of the times that Donald Trump has gone after the Muslim community.
So listen, Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States until our country's representatives can figure out what the hell is going on.
So that's super duper clear. A total and complete shutdown on Muslims. So this is not an open question. It's not a debate. Donald Trump has spread hatred towards Muslims, period. It's not an open question. He said he wanted a total and complete shutdown of all Muslims. So there is no nuance there. And even after New Zealand, he still has not put out a statement saying, hey, there should be no hatred or fear of Muslims. You wanna say, hey, look, he doesn't talk about Islamophobia. Yeah, right-wingers don't like to talk about any bigotry or racism. They think that none of it exists. But okay, so don't use that word. But something incredibly simple like, please don't kill Muslims. He won't even say that. He says, oh, thoughts and prayers for New Zealand in general. We're looking out for New Zealand, no mention of Muslims. He is filled with bigotry. It's not a debate. You saw it with your own eyes, and you saw it a million times on the campaign trail. Why am I animated about it? Because now cable news is having a debate.
Of course they are.
Where's the debate? It's not.
But of course you'd have a debate if you are cable news, because who do you hire as your contributors? People who used to work for the Trump administration. That encourages a debate that's not realistic. It's not grounded in real life. It's grounded in one group of political operatives fighting or debating against another group of political operatives. Where's the journalistic value in that? There's none.
No, I'm telling you, there isn't anything that Trump could do or say that cable news wouldn't debate. I mean, he can come out, the famous thing about I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue that Trump said and I'd get away with it and my supporters would back me up. Well, now it's fairly clear that he was right about that. But Donald Trump could say the most outlandish things. He could say, you know what, I'm black. And his supporters would go on cable news and go, orange is the new black. Of course he is, right?
That was good, Jake.
Okay.
That was good. Yeah.
And they'll have a debate. I swear to God, they'd have a debate on CNN.
100%.
Okay, and they'd be like, well, we got to hear out both sides.
So one other thing I want to draw attention to is the fact that every time there was an act of violence, whether it was in Europe or here in the United States, before we could get the details over who committed that act of violence, Donald Trump would very publicly pin it on Muslims, okay? This is radical Islamic extremism, this is terrorism, and I just want you to remember that as you watch this next clip.
The media is putting all the blame on the right and the president's supporters.
Well, you're right. They immediately politicize everything. They do something else. They insert themselves. I must speak. I must say something. No, you don't. You can actually shut up and pray for people and wait for the authorities to make their judgments.
Can you imagine if after 9/11, somebody came out from the government and said, why don't you just shut up and pray? No, we're not gonna go after the people who did it. We're not gonna address it. We're not even gonna condemn it. Just shut up and pray. That's all you're gonna get. Can you imagine if they did that after the Orlando shooting or after the shooting in Northern California, when it's Muslims who do it? Oh my God, the Boston Marathon. Could you imagine afterwards? They're like, just shut up and pray. We're not gonna do anything about it. We're not even gonna condemn it. Okay, but when it's a right winger, they're like, oh, it's so predictable that they would blame the right wing. That's because he's a right winger, and that's because every murder that in this country last year, now in New Zealand, is by right wing extremists. So the head of the Anti-Defamation League went on TV today again to say, no, Donald Trump saying white supremacy is just a small group of people is not true. It's a global terror threat. And yes, he's wrong on the facts. Every murder in this country by an extremist last year was done by a right winger. I mean, look at the double talk that Kellyanne Conway had in the earlier clip. No, he's not technically a Nazi, he's just a fascist. Gee, I wonder where the fascists are on the political spectrum. I got news for you, they're on the right wing.
What I'm also hearing this other talking point from conservative pundits, which is, oh, well, the shooter was obsessed with fertility rates and how the Muslim community is having too many children. And then they tried to make it seem as though that's a concern or a worry coming from the left wing. No, that's a concern coming from conservatives over and over again. That's all we hear about. We got to keep the Muslims out. We shouldn't be having other people's babies. Who said that?
Steve King. I believe he's in the right wing. He's a Republican congressman. He's still in Congress, and he said we can't, something along the lines of we can't rescue our civilization with other people's babies.
Right.
So you need to increase the baby count on the white side, but definitely not on the Muslim side. He went and murdered 49 Muslims. Where's the conversation about whether the guy is a right winger or a left winger? I mean, this is why the mainstream media greatly frustrates progressives, and the idea that they are liberal is preposterous, absurd, insane, okay? There isn't anything that they would do a false neutrality on, a false equivalency on. Say, well, I mean, there's a fascist who murdered all the Muslims, but Kellyanne Conway says he might be a liberal fascist. Let's have a debate because we need the ratings and I have to call everything even. So I'll bring in a Trump person and a non-Trump person and they'll have a nonsense debate and then we'll call it even.
It's insane. So let's get to Kellyanne Conway's final talking point, which has to do with what she claims the conservatives are, too high class to ever get engaged in. And then we're gonna prove her wrong. Take a look.
Look, someone like me who, reflecting on the first year of our time in the White House here at the end of 2017, was asked what was the worst day there. And I know the person in the media was expecting me to say something else. And I said the worst day, bar none, was the day Steve Scalise almost lost his life on that ball field in Arlington, Virginia. And thank God he didn't. But we didn't run around saying, gee, the guy said he watches MSNBC or he's a Bernie supporter. Nobody should do that. Nobody should blame folks other than the evil, hateful shooter.
Oh, okay. So Kellyanne Conway claims that after the attempt to shoot and kill Steve Scalise, that she didn't try to pin it on the left wing. They were much better than that.
She said nobody did. Nobody
did.
on the right wing did.
Okay, well, I don't know. We have receipts. Let's take a look.
As Steve Scalise was fighting for his life and crawling into right field in a trail of blood, you should go back and see what people were saying about the president and the Republicans at that very moment. It's terrible because it's one thing to say, I disagree with you on healthcare repeal or on taxes or on your plan for national security, but you can't attack people personally in a way and think that tragedies like this won't happen.
Okay, so look, I think we're pretty consistent. We're in the camp of rhetoric matters. So if you are incessantly demonizing one group of people, certain groups of people, and you will not let it go, you continue doing it over and over again, you are gonna stoke fear, you are going to incite violence, which is why I think rhetoric matters and you need to be careful. But Kellyanne Conway will, support Donald Trump stoking tension and fear. And then she'll turn around and pretend as if he's completely innocent. And then in that video, you heard what she said. She's blaming the rhetoric of the left for encouraging someone to open fire against right-wing politicians.
Well, and she said it herself. But they have no remorse, they have no conscience. So she goes on TV and goes, now we never said that the left was stoking anything or that the shooter was a left-winger in the Steve Scalise story. When she herself said it on air, on the same channel. On television, she doesn't care. doesn't care. Because you and I have normal human instincts like shame, guilt, and joy and all the other things too. But in this case, like you'd feel a little ashamed if you so brazenly lied on national TV in a way that could be disproven so easily. But a lot of times, a lot of the national cable guys don't even bother disproving her. And she's right there, so she gets to lie over and over and over again. And so whenever it's an attack that they think that they could take political advantage of, they're all over it. Scalise, you're crawling in right field in blood, and it was the people on the left who were saying terrible things about Republicans. You see what happened there? Oh my God, the Muslims, every time they do attack, they're all unified. They're all part of a certain ideology. There's something we gotta do about it. We gotta take legal action. We gotta make sure that they don't come into this country. Let's polarize, let's make sure you hate the right people. When it's right wings doing it over again. No, just shut up and pray. Don't say anything. And my God, we would never do it. We would never do it. Thoughts and prayers, thoughts and prayers. But whatever you do not do anything about it. And then they wonder, hey, I wonder how it got here. Well, it got here because not only did you encourage it, as the government whose central job is to protect us, you did nothing to protect us. And now this poison has spread all across the world, including to New Zealand.
Absolutely. I mean, look, dividing and conquering has been a very effective strategy for the Trump administration. He's been demagoguing and he's been spreading all sorts of nonsense about minority groups, Muslims, and it's worked out for him when it comes to getting elected and drumming up support among his base. But there are always consequences, and they don't ever want to take responsibility for those consequences. And not only is it insulting to the family members who are now grieving the loss of their loved ones as a result of this type of rhetoric, but it just also signals that there aren't going to be any changes in behavior or any solutions moving forward. As long as Trump is in office, as long as we have people like this running the country and saying the things they say and doing the things they do, this type of behavior will continue happening. God forbid, these types of terrorist attacks will continue happening, and we're not gonna have any solutions for it. They're gonna continue refusing to take any responsibility or changing their behavior, and that's the most depressing part about all of this.
When Donald Trump said in his acceptance speech at the Republican National Convention, "I alone can protect you," I guess we all misunderstood that, and we knew that he was a bigot at that point for all the things he said on the campaign trail. But I still assumed that he meant like, I'm a father figure that can protect the whole country. No. He was apparently saying, I alone can protect you, right-wing white Christians. Everybody else, I'm not gonna bother to protect at all. And I'm not gonna care. When Nazis chanted blood and soil on US soil in Charlottesville, and when they said the Jews will not replace us, he said there was very fine people on that side. And they killed somebody that day. They killed somebody that day. He didn't say I alone can protect you. He said there's very fine people among the Nazi murderers. I mean, that should have ended his presidency. I mean, it would have ended anybody's presidency. I mean, can you imagine if Obama said there was very fine people on the side of the Nazis who killed people that day after chanting anti-Semitic chants like that, right? And no, the march, the right-wing band played on, and then synagogue is attacked, 11 people killed, doesn't protect you. Muslims attacked, doesn't protect you. Right-wing terrorist attack after terrorist attack, women attacked in Florida, doesn't protect you. Because he didn't mean you, he meant my people. And remember what he said at the rallies, if you assault anyone on the other side, I'll pay your legal fees. So I'm not here to protect them. I'm only here to protect the white right-wing Christians. He's a very scary guy. He's not interested in being the president in a democracy. He's interested in being an autocrat who only protects what he views as his people. This guy's a monster, and he's currently in charge.
Well, you're not the only one who recognizes him as a monster. One of the Conways does. And we're gonna talk about that when we come back from the break, okay? George Conway, man, he does not hold back in going after Trump.
So this is Kellyanne Conway's husband, and he is pretty much, I'd say he's right there with me in being like some of the most aggressive things said against Donald Trump in the country. I mean, they think they're aggressive on cable news. They're playing patty cakes. I mean, you guys watch this show, you know what I say. But Kellyanne Conway's husband is right there next to me. So there's something really weird and fishy going on there. We'll explain the whole thing to you when we come back. All right, back on the Young Turks. First of all, if you are a journalism student, make sure that you are getting your free Young Turks membership. No strings attached. The audience bought it for you guys. Go to student@tyt.com and you'll be getting a free membership for the year, okay? Number two, this is the last day of this random sale that we're having. Almost all of our sales are random. 20% off at shoptyt.com. They say limited time only, as in today. It runs through today and then it's over. So shoptyt.com, that's Rosa Parks, by the way, on that shirt. And you don't have to be mad while wearing it. That's optional. Okay, so now let me go to your comments. First, the members, as usual. Progressive Todd says if Trump condemned hatred, then he might not get reelected. You can see how that would be a problem in his mind, especially if he will be going to jail once he's out of office. So he definitely thinks white supremacists, right-wing racists all vote for me. I got to keep them happy. That's not an excuse, but it's clearly part of his thinking, so I think you're exactly right. The Neon Donkey says, if you repeat the lie enough times, it becomes a truth. Well, wait till you get a load of a story we're gonna do for you a little bit later in the program, where unfortunately you're proven very, very right. Gabby Marita says, the only time Trump will ever see right-wing terrorism as a problem is if it targets other right-wingers. Short of that, as long as the right-wing terrorists kill the others, he doesn't think it's a problem. Unfortunately, I think that's also true. Peter Colin says, so glad to finally watch you guys live. Welcome back, Anna. So glad to have gotten to see you in my hometown. You rocked it to UN.
Thank you, thank you.
Okay, all right. UN will never be the same again. So, and thank you to all of our members who showed up. The activist members got to go first. So tyt.com/join to make that happen. Last two are from Twitter. I'm a Derpy Panda says, the only bigotry the right sees is the imaginary reverse racism in their head. Also true. JE123 Fun says the problem here, Cenk, is that people are not part of any organization. They're not members of the KKK. They're people with no direct link to each other. They're a new form of terrorism that is different than the terrorist organization. That's right, and that's why I've been talking about it over and over and over again to you guys. It's called stochastic terrorism, where you encourage violence in general, but not towards a specific person, so you cannot be held legally accountable. And then you hope that there are random lunatics who will be encouraged by that and act as lone wolves. So to some degree, ISIS does that, and so does Donald Trump. So I wrote about it on tyt.com. You should go check that out. By the way,
you're writing blogs.
I'm writing blogs.
How do you have time to write blogs? This guy.
Oh well, look.
This guy.
No, I'll tell you real quick. I wrote it as an op-ed, and we sent it to all the papers, and they're like, to be fair, I don't know exactly why they didn't take it, but they considered it. So. But at the end of the day, they're like, right wing, weaponizing their followers. Oh, this sounds a little uncomfortable. No. I mean, is that really a phenomenon? And since then, there's been one right wing terrorist attack after another, after another, after another. Unfortunately, in this case, but as usual, I was right. Okay, all right, let's keep going.
Kellyanne Conway's husband, George Conway, has been extremely critical of Donald Trump, and he's been very publicly critical of Donald Trump. Now, the most recent criticism had to do with Donald Trump's mental fitness for office. And what George Conway did was he first tweeted the cover of what's known as the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. This is what's used by mental health professionals in order to diagnose individuals that they're seeing, clients, patients, you get the picture. And then Conway included two mental disorders that he believes Donald Trump has. The first is narcissistic personality disorder, which is defined as a pervasive pattern of grandiosity in fantasy or behavior, need for admiration, and lack of empathy.
Ding, 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 ding,
yeah.
We have a winner.
Okay, so look, I'm tempted. You guys understand, right? I get very tempted to chime in and share my own hypothesis about Donald Trump's mental health. But I just want to be clear, we're not mental health professionals. George Conway's not a mental health professional. Anyone can open up the DSM and decide to diagnose someone, but it really takes a mental health professional who's sitting with a client to diagnose them. So I just want to get that out of the way.
Now, having said that, okay, look, I resisted this during the Bush Cheney years. And we even had a therapist come on here and explain the theory of why he thinks Bush acts the way he does. And I said, look, it's an interesting theory, but you don't really know, you didn't diagnose him, etc. In this case, you don't have to be a psychologist or a psychiatrist for you to have an opinion on it, okay? It doesn't mean that you're gonna lock him up based on your opinion, dude, right? It doesn't have the force of law, but read it. I mean, it is word for word Trump. Anybody can see it, even his own supporters, even Kellyanne Conway's husband can see it. Here, can I read you those 5 things? I know it's long, but look, every one of them matches Trump word for word. Okay, so go back to the narcissistic personality disorder graphic. Here, let's read along. Number 1, has a grandiose sense of self-importance, e.g. exaggerates achievements, and God, these are
Here,
tiny
I'll read
words.
it. Has a grandiose sense of self-importance, exaggerates achievements and talents, expects to be recognized as superior without commensurate achievements.
Ding, 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 ding.
Is preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love.
A minus ideal love, word for word.
Believes that he or she is special and unique and can only be understood by or should associate with other special or high status people or institutions.
Mar-a-Lago.
Okay, requires excessive admiration.
Come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
Has a sense of entitlement, i.e. unreasonable expectations of especially favorable treatment or automatic compliance with his or her, and then it gets cut off. So I don't know what the rest says.
Well, look, it applies to him 98%. You don't have to be a doctor to see it. And the whole world can see it. So does he have a personality disorder? My assessment is 100%. I've never seen a clearer case of narcissistic personality disorder than this buffoon. So but by the way, for all you progressives who sometimes come at me and go, well, you know what?
We need to talk about a relatively new show called the Republic, or UNFTR. As a Young Turks fan, you already know that the government, the media, and corporations are constantly peddling lies that serve the interests of the rich and powerful. But now there's a podcast dedicated to unraveling those lies, debunking the conventional wisdom. In each episode of the Republic, or UNFTR, the host delves into a different historical episode or topic that's generally misunderstood or purposely obfuscated by the so-called powers that be, featuring in-depth research, razor-sharp commentary, and just the right amount of vulgarity. The UNFTR podcast takes a sledgehammer to what you thought you knew about some of the nation's most sacred historical cows. But don't just take my word for it. The New York Times described UNFTR as consistently compelling and educational, aiming to challenge conventional wisdom and upend the historical narratives that were taught in school. For as the great philosopher Yoda once put it, you must unlearn what you have learned. And that's true whether you're in Jedi training or you're uprooting and exposing all the propaganda and disinformation you've been fed over the course of your lifetime. So search for UNFTR in your podcast app today and get ready to get informed, angered, and entertained all at the same time.
You shouldn't do Trump impersonations, and you should take it easy on how much you go after him.
Come on.
Because the guy's obviously mentally ill. Sorry. He's the president of the United States. He's the most powerful man on earth. He has his tiny little hands on the nuclear button. No, this is not the time to go easy on people who have narcissistic personality disorders.
It's a very big button. Okay,
it's bigger than your button. I got it from the manual.
Narcissistic personality disorder wasn't the only mental health condition that George Conway mentioned. He also tweeted about antisocial personality disorder, a pervasive pattern of disregard for and violation of the rights of others.
And read that one, that matches 85%.
Okay, so let's go back to the screenshot of antisocial personality disorder. Failure to conform to social norms with respect to lawful behaviors as indicated by repeatedly performing acts that are grounds for arrest.
By the way, what have I called him the entire time? Lifelong criminal. Because he is, over and over again. So one scam after another, Trump University, Trump Foundation, the undocumented immigrants he hired for all of his towers, undocumented immigrants he now hires for his golf courses, tax evasion, financial fraud, lifelong criminal, matches it exactly.
I'd like to bring this story to me. because
thanks God.
This was one of the rare stories where I actually ended up feeling good about myself, because we hear about antisocial behavior and I thought I had antisocial behavior. I go to work and then I go home. I don't want to talk to you. You know, I walk my dog, and you know how sometimes you're walking your dog, you wouldn't know. When you're walking your dog, there are other dog walkers who want to like stop and like have a conversation with you as the dogs sniff their genitals, each other's genitals.
Oh, that's what I'm missing out on.
No, it's the bane of my existence. I hate that. I want to do everything possible to avoid it. But no, I don't have antisocial behavior, because let's read the rest of this definition. As you can see, deceitfulness is indicated by repeated lying, use of aliases, or conning others for personal profit or pleasure. I don't do that. I don't do that.
Yeah.
I'm not antisocial.
No. And by the way, remember when Donald Trump used to pretend to be John Miller, and when he called reporters, you know, Donald Trump is dating Madonna, and he's amazing in bed. This is John Miller. The guy's a psycho. He's a literal psycho. Okay. By the way, I was at a dog park this weekend, okay?
Why?
Okay, so you know what? Post game for the members only, tyt.com/join to become member. I'll tell you about how we're antisocial or not antisocial. I'll tell you about it in the context of this week. And we talk about our personal lives a lot. And the last half hour of the Young Turks was just for the members, okay?
Yeah.
tyt.com/join. All right, what's next?
Okay, so actually you're next, because you have a theory about George Conway's very public shaming of Donald Trump.
Yes, so he also tweeted out that his condition is getting worse. Now that's a very clear warning. The guy's married to Kellyanne Conway. This is not complicated. Like, this part I understand about the mainstream media, that why they can't speculate, but we can. Okay, as long as we're clear with you that we are, right? That this is my theory. But it's so goddamn obvious, right? They're married to one another. Kellyanne Conway is going home and saying he's getting worse. The guy's a lunatic. He has all of these problems, and what? She deals with them every day. Every single person that has left the administration is like, yeah. And by the way, they don't say it publicly until they write their book, because then they're gonna cash in. But they leak like crazy, and the leaks are not, hard to figure out. And they're all like, watch out, the guy's a lunatic, watch out, right? Like, you don't know how unstable he is, because they work with him every day. They know more than anybody how unstable he is.
Right.
So she goes home and tells George Conway, and George Conway then tweets it out. People are like, oh, I wonder why George Conway thinks that. He's married to Kellyanne Conway, who deals with the president every day. This is not one of those, James Carville, Mary Madeline, they're a team of rivals and they got married, but one supports the Republicans, the other one supports. If James Carville was Clinton's top advisor in the White House after the campaign, and Mary Madeline kept sending out messages, Bill Clinton is losing his mind. Trust me, I know, he's getting worse. You would have been like, what? She lives with Carville. Like, it's so obvious, right? They didn't do that, they had political debates. Right? So here's what Kellyanne Conway is going to do. I've said this before, mark my words. Write this one down in stone.
No, JR, but literally you should mark his words, because he's gonna ask for this at some time in the future. And
when I am proven, when I'm proven right again.
Told you.
Okay, and yes, we're gonna do a told you segment, and you'll see this on the told you segment, okay? Kellyanne Conway will claim afterwards, I was trying to send you guys signals. How much clearer did I need to be? Did you need my dog tweeting in? Did you need my aunt and uncle and grandparents tweeting in? It's my husband. I went home and I told him, the guy's a lunatic, tell everybody, it'll be obvious that it's coming from me. And then she will use that as an excuse, like, oh no, I was on the inside working on behalf of the American people to try to make sure that Donald Trump, you guys knew what was really happening. No, and that's the only reason I stayed. And the stuff that I said on television, it was comically over the top. I can't believe you guys took that stuff seriously. I, of course, was doing it to keep Donald Trump's trust so that I could give you guys that warning through my husband. By the way, that will conveniently lead her to be able to say, you see that, I'm now a good guy and CNN should hire me.
Well, if your theory is correct, I have no doubt CNN would hire her. Secondly, if your theory is correct and this is what her game plan is, this is a ridiculous way of trying to control the Trump administration, right? Because It's not working. Remember, someone in the administration anonymously wrote a New York Times op-ed trying to communicate to the world what's really happening behind closed doors with this administration, how unhinged he is, how he's not fit for office. What did that do? Did that help anything? No. The truth is, people like Kellyanne Conway, and to some extent, John Kelly, are so obsessed with power and greed that they are willing to enable him as long as it takes in order for them to cash in, profit as much as possible. But they also want plausible deniability in the end. They want to be able to turn around and say, no, we're not the bad guys, we're the good guys. I mean, look at what John Kelly did as soon as he was out of the administration. He goes on his tour talking about how disastrous Trump is, how damaging he is to the country. Like, what good is it now that you've essentially been fired by the Trump administration?
So when she makes those excuses, do not accept them, okay? So she will say later, well, there was nothing I could do. What else could I do? I was trying to warn you guys as much as I could. So I'm gonna tell you ahead of time what you could have done today, okay? You could have come out and said, I believe the cabinet should get together and consider the 25th Amendment because the president is deeply unstable. He is mentally unfit for office. I'm Kellyanne Conway. I supported him throughout the entire campaign. I supported him for years afterwards into his presidency. No one knows him better than I do. He is mentally unstable. He must be removed from office. That would cause a huge uprising, and then people would talk about it. I don't know that it would work, but then you would have done as much as you can, and there would be a serious discussion about the 25th Amendment. And what would happen? The conservatives would cut you off, and the liberals would not yet accept you, and you wouldn't make any money in the meanwhile. Oh, we can't have that, Kellyanne, can we? We can't have that. You got to keep that gravy train rolling, and as soon as it's time to jump off that bandwagon, this is your insurance policy, and you're gonna jump off and make money on the other side.
Okay, so again, if this theory proves to be true, and it's all about the money, this I know for a fact, it's all about the money for the Kellyanne Conways of the world. Like, isn't her husband a lawyer, a successful lawyer? Isn't it better for you to just do the right thing? Like, you're gonna be okay. You're gonna be okay. You have all the money you need. You're not gonna end up on the streets. Like, do the right thing for the country, for the world.
She's a right winger. All she sees is greed, greed, greed. It's never enough fame, never enough power, never enough money. So she's not gonna do any of those things. And imagine if all the people who were concerned when it mattered, if Kellyanne Conway and Rex Tillerson and John Kelly and Jim Mattis and Gary Cohn and all those people all came out and said, no, the president is mentally unstable. We must act. It would have made a giant difference, especially when they were still on the cabinet and they could have voted on the 25th Amendment. But they all chose to protect their pride and their privilege over putting country first. That's who they are.
Let's move on to Fox News and Jeanine Pirro. It appears that Fox News has finally decided that maybe Judge Jeanine Pirro isn't a good show to have on their network. Now, did they do this out of principle? Did they do this because they're worried about some of her questionable rhetoric? No, it's all about the money, and we'll get back to that in just a second. But first, here are the statements on Pirro's show that eventually got her canceled.
Think about it. Omar wears a hijab, which according to the Quran 33:59 tells women to cover so they won't get molested. Is her adherence to this Islamic doctrine indicative of her adherence to Sharia law, which in itself is antithetical to the United States Constitution? But right. it is clear, I think that this is Sharia adherent behavior.
So Pirro's statements led to a lot of backlash, and then all of a sudden, advertisers, boop, dropping out. And so Fox News is panicking because they can't lose all of their advertisers. And so it appears that they have decided to cancel Pirro's show. They're refusing to release any statements about it. But Trump feels very strongly about this and feels that Pirro should definitely be given her show back. And here are his tweets about it. Bring back Judge Jeanine Pirro. The radical left Democrats, working closely with their beloved partner, the fake news media, is using every trick in the book to silence a majority of our country. They have all-out campaigns against Fox News hosts who are doing too well. By the way, I want to be clear that Trump isn't supportive of all Fox News hosts. He hates Shepard Smith. Can you guess why? So Shepard Smith isn't doing Trump's bidding for him. He's not supportive of Donald Trump, and so he wants to get rid of Shep Smith. But he loves Jeanine Pirro because Jeanine Pirro is very favorable and complimentary to Trump.
So this is the same guy that sends Kellyanne Conway out to say, oh no, Donald Trump condemns bigotry. Now, he has actually not condemned bigotry. And after the New Zealand attacks where 49 people were murdered, he never even once condemned the guy for attacking Muslims. Never brought up Muslims, never talked about hatred against Muslims, when that was obviously what was motivating factor in New Zealand. Now, normally they do that. Presidents do that. Obviously, the leader of New Zealand did that. All the other world leaders did that. The only world leader who didn't mention Islam at all was Donald Trump, because he encourages and is excited by hatred and fear towards Muslims. So in this case, Jeanine Pirro says, are Muslims really American? Can they really abide by the Constitution? And what does Donald Trump do? He jumps to her defense. So when someone murders 49 Muslims, he is not driven to speak out against it. He just does a general vague thing about, hey, we're with New Zealand, right? But when someone attacks Muslims, he's like, yes, I'm defending her. You gotta put her back on. I love the way she attacks Muslims. What, me? Bigotry against Muslims? Well, golly gee, I would never. He doesn't even say that. He sends Kellyanne Conway to say that. He can't stomach the idea that he would be decent to Muslims. It's just not a thing that he has any interest in. These guys, they're all monsters. Again, I can't stand that cable news has debates about this.
So in subsequent tweets, Trump argues that, Democrats and the lefties, they're pushing political correctness down our throats. And I just find that so fascinating, because conservatives, and especially people like Donald Trump, are very much in favor of political correctness. It's just the type of political correctness that they're supportive of. So on the same weekend that he tweeted these things about Jeanine Pirro, he also had some choice tweets for late night comedy shows that mock him, and I want to get to those. So let's go to graphic 13. Again, same weekend, he tweeted this. It's truly incredible that shows like Saturday Night Live, not funny, no talent, can spend all of their time knocking the same person, me, over and over without so much of a mention of the other side, like an advertisement without consequences. Same with late night shows. And then he says this: should Federal Election Commission and or FCC look into this? Okay, so let's stop. So he is threatening late night shows with federal investigations because they make fun of Trump. They hurt his feelings so much. By the way, how sad is that? That's so pathetic and so embarrassing. I would be embarrassed if I supported him as a president. Because who wants to support a child like that, who's that thin-skinned? But anyway.
So the snowflake in chief, God, his feelings hurt. I thought facts didn't care about your feelings. So, but meanwhile, they'll all rush and be like, no, it's true. Our dear leader's feelings have been hurt by comedians. They keep telling jokes. So the federal government should ban that and make sure that they take action, punitive action against it. By the way, we're free speech advocates.
At TYT, we frequently talk about all the ways that big tech companies are taking control of our online lives, constantly monitoring us and storing and selling our data. But that doesn't mean we have to let them. It's possible to stay anonymous online and hide your data from the prying eyes of big tech. And one of the best ways is with ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN hides your IP address, making your activity more difficult to trace and sell to advertisers. ExpressVPN also encrypts 100% of your network data to protect you from eavesdroppers and cyber criminals. And it's also easy to install. A single mouse click protects all your devices. But listen, guys, this is important. ExpressVPN is rated #1 by CNET and Wired magazine. So take back control of your life online and secure your data with a top VPN solution available, ExpressVPN. And if you go to expressvpn.com/TYT, you can get 3 extra months for free with this exclusive link just for TYT fans. That's expressvpn.com/TYT. Check it out today.
You guys are jokes. All those right-wing leaders, the right-wing pundits, all hilarious jokes. And I don't know, maybe you guys should take action against yourselves because you're joking. And even Trump the other day, he's like, I am going to do something to make sure there's free speech on campus, unless they're making fun of me, in which case I'll send the Gestapo after them. You don't believe in free speech. The Constitution is a punchline for you. We defended the right-wingers and their free speech. We actually defend free speech. We actually believe in him. This sad, pathetic man, they made fun of me. No. But if you also notice, he's like, it's like a free ad without consequences. Kind of like what all of cable news did for your campaign.
Totally, but also, I mean, if you look at the way political elections or elections happen these days, those ads, all of them are full of all sorts of lies and fabrications and accusations that have absolutely no merit behind them. I mean, it's kind of crazy how political ads can be as deceiving or deceitful as humanly possible, and there's no consequences for it.
So when you hear somebody on the left defend free speech, we actually mean it. We have principles. So whether it's right wing, left wing, in the middle, it doesn't matter. And we believe in the marketplace of ideas. And we crush right wing daily in that marketplace of ideas. That's why they go and cry in a corner about us. But when you hear the right wing say free speech, understand what they actually mean. They mean, come on, we want to say racist and bigoted things, and we hate Muslims and Latinos and black people, and half of us hate Jews. Okay, and we just want to say it. We just want to say it. We want to say blacks are criminals. We want to say Latinos are a virus invading this country. We want to say Muslims are violent and irredeemable. Just let us say it. Okay, fine, but can other people make fun of the president? No. Can other people disagree with the right-wing government of Israel? No. Right? Can
you say that you're better than racists?
No, whatever you do, you're not allowed to say you're better than racist. You have to admit that you're equal to racists or worse, right? So they get triggered so easy, and they will ban that speech so quick, it'll make your head spin. So meanwhile, they go around like, oh, why won't you let Jeanine Pirro hate Muslims? The president is a baby and a pretty pathetic one at that. And everyone who supports him should be eternally embarrassed at what a beta male, an omega male that they have gotten behind, okay? And by the way, Pirro is formally suspended. I don't know, pending Donald Trump's next tweet. Fox News might go, oh, well, the president told us she's got to keep doing propaganda against Muslims, so she's back. But for the moment being, she's formally suspended. And by the way, right wing, go ahead and get triggered by this. You know why advertisers don't want you to discriminate against Muslims? It's not because those corporations are good people. They're not people, they're amoral, they're corporations, they want to maximize profit.
Some of them are very fine people though.
Yeah, so the reason is there's 1.6 billion Muslims in the world, which is 1.6 billion customers. They don't want to alienate 1.6 billion customers, and that's a good thing because that incentivizes them to care about everybody because they're all consumers. Now, they're not necessarily doing it for the right reason, but at least that's a rare thing for big business that leads in the right direction where they want everyone treated equally. Now, when you tell the right wing that, they get so triggered. They're like, maybe we should rethink our loyalty to big business. How's that for? And then we have Tucker Carlson on Fox News going, maybe big business is not so good. So, and here we are, okay? And so when business starts pulling out of bigoted shows, all of a sudden, conservatives get triggered, not just by us pointing out the quotes of Jeanine Pirro, Tucker Carlson, etc., but by the fact that big business is now controlling the amount of money that they're getting. They're like, no, big business is supposed to be on our side as we crush the other side and make sure that everyone has lower wages. What? Okay, and that's what you fought for your whole life. And now when it's coming back around on you, all of a sudden, your feelings are hurt. So understand that that's the dynamic at hand.
When we come back, a new poll indicates that a pretty sizable chunk of voters do think that Trump is being targeted with a witch hunt.
So that story has a ton of nuance, but it's massively important. So don't miss that one. We'll be right back. We hope you're enjoying this free clip from the Young Turks. If you want to get the whole show and more exclusive content while supporting independent media, become a member at tyt.com/join today. In the meantime, enjoy this free segment. All right, I want to tell you about one of our sponsors, Aspiration. Aspiration.com/tyt is where you go to set up a bank account where you get a peace of mind. So not only do they not put it in any of the dirty companies like oil companies and gun companies, But they also give you the best interest rate there is. Plus, they give away 10% to charity. So have peace of mind where your money is. As they say, do well, do good. Aspiration.com/TYT. Okay. So now let's go to the member comments. Pammy44 says, Cenk, if you stop doing your Trump imitation, I will cancel my membership.
But you got to keep doing it.
Okay, I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do then, guys. I got to keep going on it, okay? TYT.com/join actually to get that membership. Okay, J.M. Frazier says the administration won't mess with removing Trump until after 2020 because they don't think anyone could do as well against the Dems and progressives as Trump. Switching now would weaken their position. That is unfortunately true. It's true that they will not do as well, in my opinion, and it's true that the Republicans probably have concluded that. And they're worried about Trump's fascist base coming after them. I mean, look at what happened to Tom Tillis in North Carolina. He said, executive action to circumvent Congress is unacceptable. Trump said, we're gonna primary. He's like, sorry, sir, of course, sir. Executive action, I vote yes, right away, sir. Okay.
God, they're so spineless.
They're the worst. Okay. Gravity Boy says, be careful, George Conway may be setting up Trump's final defense, crazy and not responsible. We must focus on his crimes. Look, I've told you this from day one, I'll take it. If he wants to call himself crazy and that's his way of getting out of going to jail, but he leaves, done, I'd do that deal.
100%.
Yeah, and so a lot of you will say, no, that's not fair. He should go to prison for a long time for all of his different crimes, for years and years of getting away with criminal offenses to enrich himself. I hear you, but the country and the world is in danger. I'd do that deal in a second. Okay, we could talk more about that in the post game if you guys want. All right, and Game and Pegasus 187 on Twitter says, if Puro gets canceled, I could only offer her thoughts and prayers in this difficult time. And if she does get canceled, we could tell Trump, hey, just shut up and pray. Okay.
Hijab. Anyway, okay. You ready?
Yeah, you know what? I
knew you weren't ready.
I know you weren't. You knew you were right. You were right and you egged me on. Guys, we live in two different worlds, man. People listen to Jeanine Pirro in her maniacal way of speaking, let alone the maniacal things she says. And they're like, yes, that makes sense. When she goes, and her hijab is a part of the Sharia law, and the Sharia law is not, doesn't believe in the Constitution. And people are like, oh yeah, that's true. Oh my God. Hey, you guys see Judge Jeanine Pirro? She figured out the hijab conspiracy, right? And so, I mean, how do we talk to those guys? People are constantly, Beto is on the campaign trail, constantly beseeching us to unite with the Republic, find common ground. What are you talking about? How am I gonna find common ground with the hijab people? Okay, so, all right, anyway, maybe more in a post game. All right, go ahead, Anna.
A new poll indicates that half of Americans do believe that the Mueller investigation into possible Russian collusion with the Trump campaign is a witch hunt. So this is the highest percentage so far. This poll keeps being done over and over again, but let me give you all the details. So this was done by USA Today, Suffolk University, and half of Americans agree with President Donald Trump's contention that he has been the victim of a witch hunt. So I want to give you.
Yeah, I just want you guys to be careful about that. We're gonna give you context, right?
Yeah.
So that sentence is not accurate, okay? This is a deeply troubling poll and it has important ramifications, but that's not how the question was exactly phrased.
So I actually want to get to the way the question was phrased right off the bat. So here's how it was written to the respondents. President Trump has called the special counsel's investigation a witch hunt and said he's been subjected to more investigations than previous presidents because of politics. Do you agree? That is horrible framing. I mean, it's horrible because you're giving the survey respondents one side or one perspective while you frame the question, right? So the president says that he's the victim of a witch hunt. Do you agree? Is that the right way to frame it? I don't know. I mean, I'm not an expert in methodology, but I would argue that that's gonna skew the response.
So, and that's the less problematic part of that question. So look, either this was a pollster that is not very good at his job, or they purposely asked that question so that they could write that misleading sentence afterwards. Because remember, the question at the end is, and you just saw it for yourself, and said he's been subjected to more investigations than previous presidents because of politics. Do you agree? So you could easily agree with that premise. I don't. He's been subjected to a lot of investigations, but I think rightfully so. And it's not disproportionate. But I can see how a lot of Americans would say, "Oh, has he been subjected to more political investigations because of politics?" Yeah, I can see them answering yes to that. But the witch hunt is in the first part of the sentence, and those are two different things. You're going to be subject to a lot of political investigations and have that be totally right, whereas a witch hunt implies it's totally wrong and it's outrageous and it never should have been done in the first place. So you shouldn't have put those two things in the same sentence, let alone have the back half of the sentence be something that people could vote yes on, unless you wanted to come out afterwards and go, you see that? Most Americans believe that it's a witch hunt. We should wrap this thing up. So look, I can't read the guy's mind. I don't know if the guy who wrote it is conservative, Republican or not, right? But I do know that everybody framing it that way is really misleading. Okay, now having said that, I'm not saying that it's not troubling. It's still troubling. Because even if you take the portion of the sentence where it says, subjected to more investigations of previous presidents because of politics, and still a huge percentage are saying yes. They heard witch hunt overall in the sentence and they didn't freak out, and still a lot of them said yes. So it's still interesting and it's still concerning, and which is gonna get me to my other point, which is, man, repetition works.
Of course it does.
I gotta tell you something, repetition works. See what I just did there? Okay, now this is what Trump has got figured. It's the only thing he gets right? Run towards the spotlight and then repeat things maniacally that your base likes. And just keep on saying it over and over and over and over and over again. See, I just did it again. So the Democrats, on the other hand, hide from their own shadow. Like, don't make your own case. No, Medicare for all. It polls at 70%, but is that a real poll? Right? And so like, I mean, Obama, when did he ever make his own case, right? He'd be like, well, I didn't get credit for that. Yeah, dude, because you never asked for credit.
Totally.
And so the idea of Obama maniacally repeating things is never happened, let alone repeating things non-maniacally, let alone ever taking credit for anything. So if I was Obama, you know what I would have done? And because it's not about self-aggrandizement. You have to deliver the message so you convince people so we get to the right policies. I would have put up a giant chart of the stock market. It would be like, you see, this is where Bush crashed it, and then this is where I started implementing my policies and the numbers go up. Now, I would have then turned around and criticized them and said, look, the stock market is not the all end all be all, and wages are still low. We would have been fair about it. But the rest of the cable news, which is obsessed with the stock market because they're all rich and they all have their money in the stock market, would be like, well, I mean, and I would have done it. I would have had my spokesperson go out there and do it again and again and again. And then I would have put up the deficit numbers. And I'd be like, you see how Reagan brought up the deficit, Clinton brought it down, and then George W. Bush brought it back up, and then I brought it down. You see how that works? I'm good at bringing deficits down. The Democratic Party is good at bringing deficits down. The Republicans are terrible at it. But Obama was like, I brought down a deficit, right? So come on, man, stick up for yourself. And so this is what Nancy Pelosi, what did she just do? Impeachment, I don't know if it's a good idea.
I know, but
right?
You know what? I think that she is looking at the polls to see how Americans feel about impeachment. So look, we're in our own bubble, Cenk, you know it, right? We're in our own progressive bubble, and to us, it's unfathomable that the majority of Americans wouldn't want someone like Donald Trump to be impeached, especially when you consider his extremely low approval rating. But if you look at this poll, for instance, it indicates that the vast majority of Americans do not want impeachment hearings. They do not want the House to act on it. So support for the House of Representatives to seriously consider impeaching the president has dropped since last October by 10 percentage points to only 28%.
Even the people who did the poll, though, said it might have dropped because of what Nancy Pelosi said, because she recently came out right before they did the poll and said, no, impeachment would be what? You know, she didn't use the word unfair to the president, but did everything but say that, and did everything but say that impeachment is off the table. So now if you're an average American and you don't follow politics that closely, and Trump says it's a witch hunt, unacceptable, impeachment is the worst thing in the world, every Republican says it's the worst thing in the world, and the Democratic leader comes out and agrees with them and goes, yeah, we shouldn't do impeachment. Well, why? And remember, guys, we're large online and we've got a huge audience base, but do we cover all the countries? Isn't everybody in America watching the Young Turks? I got news for you, bad news, no, okay? But On cable news and on the Democratic Party, what do? What did they have debates over? What did the Democrats say and what did the Republicans say? And the Democrats always agree with the Republicans. So all they ever hear from the rest of news is, well, impeachment's bad. I don't know. It's crazy. It's crazy. I don't know if we're going to do it. I mean, we don't have enough evidence. If you switch that, and every day the Democrats did a press conference about, when are we gonna do anything about the tax evasion? When are we gonna do anything about the financial fraud? When are we gonna do anything about the campaign finance violations? He broke the law, It's a felony, it's a felony, it's a felony, it's a felony. When are we gonna do something about a felony? Is the president above the law? Is the president above the law, right? Then we might have a different answer to this poll. But the Democrats are worse than that Puxatawny Phil. I mean, like when the groundhog comes out and he sees his own shadow, he's like, "Well, sit there," right? And so Puxatawny Pelosi comes out and goes, impeachment, right? And so of course you're gonna get an answer that says 28%, because the Democrats never fight. They never fight. So if you believe in this poll, you should be even more adamant that, for God's sake, Democrats, will you for once in your life fight for your own voters?
The thing that I worry about the most, though, is that the establishment Democrats seem to be hyper-focused on the issue of Russian collusion. Now, look, I don't want anyone to misunderstand what I'm saying as, oh, Anna doesn't care about potential Russian collusion. I do, but I don't care about it as much as I do the potential money laundering, using his charitable foundation for personal enrichment, potential, tax evasion schemes, things like that bother me a lot more, and I would want consequences for that. But unfortunately, I'm worried that Democrats are using all of their political capital on the issue of Russian collusion. And what if Mueller comes out with a weak sauce report or weak sauce findings? And everyone conflates that investigation with all the other investigations, which again, I want to emphasize are way more important than potential, collusion. And I want, if they do find something with Russia, I want them to solve that issue so it doesn't happen again. But I don't want the president of the United States to use that office to benefit himself. I don't want him to, make decisions that affect all of us based on his own profit motives, business interests. You get the picture.
So last thing on this, guys. So the Mueller report its mandate is supposed to be just about the election. So it doesn't cover a lifelong worth of criminal activity by Donald Trump before the election, and it potentially does not cover what has happened since the election, where he has gone and talked to Putin over and over again without any other Americans in the room, without even an American translator. So if Mueller touched on any of those because of what happened during the election, then okay, great. If he left those things alone and didn't even talk about it, that is how it could be quote unquote weak sauce, as Anna just put it, right? So if that happens, the idiot Democrats have told you that everything's about the Mueller report. So if Mueller is like, hey, you asked me to look into the election. If it wasn't about the election, I handed it off to the Southern District of New York or to other prosecutors. So here's what I found out about the election. The Russians sent a bunch of tweets, okay? And Trump wanted to do a deal with for Trump Tower in Moscow, but they didn't do the deal. Okay, I'm done. Okay, then you know what's gonna happen? Everybody's gonna go, oh, we knew it, Donald Trump's innocent. Oh,
that's exactly what's gonna happen.
Damn it.
And speaking of maniacally repeating things, I mean, come on. What do you think Trump's gonna do in that scenario?
I told you, innocent, innocent. Now he won't go back and tell you, hey, I said it was a witch hunt, and it turns out it wasn't a witch hunt. They said I didn't do anything wrong. He won't correct himself on that because he never apologizes, right? People just say innocent, 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 right? And the Democrats will politely bow their head, right? So now what should the Democrats, we always like to be constructive, okay? What should the Democrats be doing? They should be talking about the felonies we already know he committed right now.
Yes,
right now.
Yes.
So not all your eggs are in the Mueller basket.
Yes. They never talk about that. How many times have we heard Democrats in Congress talk about the fact that Trump was using the Trump Foundation to pay his own legal settlements? They never talk about that.
That's unconscionable. I mean, if Hillary Clinton used the Clinton Foundation for her own personal enrichment, forget that the Saudis give her the money and then they're looking for favors later, same thing that Trump did. Okay, and I'm deeply concerned about the Clinton Foundation, or was in the day when it was relevant about that. But if she had turned to the Saudis and somehow gotten them to pay for her own legal defenses in totally unrelated cases, gotten the Saudis to buy a huge portrait of herself that she then puts up in her house? Okay, are you kidding me? She'd be impeached in a second. So look, the Democrats talked about resistance, but when it came to fighting Trump, even on the most basic things, it didn't even have to be a policy. I know the Democratic leadership doesn't want Medicare for all or Green New Deal. I know that they're full of it. But even on the simplest fight Trump on political grounds, on legal grounds, they folded. And then they come and tell me that Nancy Pelosi is a master legislator. Hilarious.
We got to take a break. When we come back, dunking contest. We're going to dunk on Lindsey Graham.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.